The Orlando Magic recently parted ways with Steve Clifford, leaving another vacancy in their head coaching position, something we've heard all too many times in the past decade or so. Clifford was just one of many head coaches let go through the revolving door of Orlando Magic head coaches. In fact, since the 2010-2011 season, we've had 6 different head coaches, and the next coach will be the 4th one in 5 years. Steve Clifford is the most successful one out of all of them, as he's able to lead our franchise to its first playoff berth in 7 years in 2019. He was brought in to end our mini playoff drought and get the most out of that Vucevic-Fournier-Gordon core as he could, and he was successful in that, as the second round was the absolute ceiling of that roster. He did well in developing J.I. and Markelle Fultz, but now that he's nearing 60, I don't think he'll have the patience and energy to develop a group of young players and stick through another tough growth process that could take several years to complete. The problem with Clifford was that he failed to adapt to the playstyle of the modern game. His drop-heavy defense gave up way too many threes for today's three-point-heavy NBA. Yeah, some teams can run the drop coverage well and have success, like the Milwaukee Bucks. However, they have solid perimeter defenders, Giannis Antetokounmpo roaming around, and a good rim protector in Brook Lopez. In addition, being old school, Clifford encouraged all his players to always crash the boards instead of getting back on defense, which nowadays is a recipe for disaster as the pace has significantly increased in the NBA. Your team absolutely needs to be a good transition defending team in order to have success. On offense, our team's pace dropped from 12th in 2018 to 25th on average during his time here. Now, what we need is a coach that will adapt to the modern game and also be patient enough to develop an extremely young core. Not someone who is in a win-now mindset that will just come in and put a band-aid on all our problems and strive for the 8th or 9th seed. Someone like a Terry Stotts or, God forbid, Jason Kidd. Instead, we needed a younger coach who's in touch with where the game is headed and with a proven track record of developing young players. It's time to start building stability for our franchise. We need to enlist confidence in our next coach and keep him or her around for at least 4 years because, as I said earlier, a revolving door of head coaches is a huge hindrance to overall player development process. For proof, look no further than the lack of development in some of our prospects during the last decade or so, like Andrew Nicholson, Aaron Gordon, Mo Bamba, Mario Hezonja, even Victor Oladipo, based on what he eventually became with the Pacers in 2018. Like, why would a young prospect trust a coach when he'll know that said head coach will eventually be let go in a year or two? Inexperienced or young players tend to get confused on what they need to improve on after hearing different teachings from different head coaches. Take Aaron Gordon as an example. Frank Vogel envisioned him as a next two-way point forward type, like a Andre Iguodala with the Sixers, or a Paul George, while Clifford played him strictly as a 3-and-D wing specialist. I believe all this confusion hampered AG's development. Anyways, I've narrowed down a large list of potential head coaches to 5. Now before I list them, I'm going to briefly talk about a few candidates that I don't believe would be good fits for the Magic. The first name that I don't want is Terry Stotts. Terry was just let go by the Blazers after a good run in Portland, helping them reach the playoffs for 8 consecutive seasons. Now the problem with hiring Stotts is not only his age, but just like Clifford, his outdated playstyle. Various Blazers fans complained about his lack of plays that he should have ran to make things easier for his superstar Dame Lillard. You can see in their play against the Nuggets where they barely ran any off-ball screens to help free up Lillard or any of their elite perimeter players like CJ McCollum and Norman Powell. His teams have always ranked low in passes per game and assists. His offense lacked ball movement, which was counterproductive as his team had good playmakers, but he failed to utilize the talent he had to its full potential. Hiring Terry Stotts would simply be counterproductive as he's similar to Steve Clifford in a lot of ways, and he's about 5 years older as well. We might as well have kept Steve Clifford if we're really looking to hire Terry Stotts like Mark Stein has reported. Another option that I don't want us to look at, as much as it may piss off a portion of the fan base, is Penny Hardaway. I know he helped Orlando back on the map in the 90s and is an Orlando Magic icon, but this hire would just be based on the element of nostalgia and to put more fans back in the seats. Now I believe Penny will be a good coach someday because Penny is an influential basketball figure to the extent that even kids born well after his prime respect him and praise him. Not only that, he has cut his chops coaching from grassroots programs and high schools in his hometown of Memphis to becoming the head coach of the Memphis Tigers. But the thing is, he's yet to coach his program to an NCAA tournament berth, despite all the elite prospects he was able to recruit. He's clearly not ready to coach an NBA team yet, and even admitted to being flattered by the Magic fans' push for him to take over for Clifford, but he stated that he has a job to finish at Memphis first. And I believe him, as he loves the program and his city, and I know he'll do a great job there, and I want him to do a great job there first. He just needs some deep NCAA tournament runs under his belt. And then I can see him leaving Memphis in about 3 or 4 years. And by then, I would love nothing more than Penny to come back and lead the Magic to the promised land that he was destined to do before his knees unfortunately gave up on him. And I have to add, I don't want him to tarnish his legacy as a Magic. He was kind of stained late in his Magic career. If you remember that 1998 season where he was injured and had surgery mid-season and then was criticized by the media, and also that idiot Tim Hardaway for not playing and only coming back just to play in the 1998 All-Star game. The fans also turned on Penny. If you remember, he was accused of orchestrating the firing of Brian Hill, and his departure to Phoenix wasn't the smoothest as well. He made some comments when he left, nothing as bad as Aaron Gordon, but some of the comments he made did not sit well with Magic fans at all. Thankfully, time has healed all wounds, and now he's regarded as Orlando Magic royalty, and I don't want a bad coaching stint to tarnish his legacy again. Moving on, I have no desire for Jason Kidd being our team's head coach. Kidd was fired by the Nets after one season, the franchise where he was at his best at. Who could forget that infamous incident when he asked some Nets player to spill water on him so that the refs would stop the play, in turn giving him a free timeout. It was just Bush League. Also, his past with domestic violence and his multiple DUI arrests just doesn't paint him as a good face for the new era of Magic basketball. Kidd's coaching style is also questionable. His Bucks teams were below average with a record of 139 to 152 in his 3.5 seasons there, despite having Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the year after he was fired, the Bucks posted historic defensive and offensive ratings and were contenders right away. And I also think he stunted Giannis' growth. Now, of course, Giannis became a 2-time MVP, but that's simply due to his physical prowess and his work ethic. Giannis never developed a reliable jumper, and his playmaking is still mediocre at best. And these are just some of the reasons of his failures during the playoffs. Jason Kidd forced him to become a point forward type, but that's just not how he should have been developed. Anyways, I don't want to digress, but Kidd is not someone we should go after. You can just tell by the way some Blazers fans reacted to the news of Dame wanting Jason Kidd. Nobody thinks Jason Kidd is a good hire. Juwan Howard is another candidate who has some Magic ties and has done a tremendous job turning around Michigan basketball. However, he's reportedly not looking to leave Michigan at the moment. If he ever changes his mind, then we should definitely look at him, as he's ran a modern NBA style offense with modern offensive sets with the Wolverines, and he also has respect from players in the NBA from his time as an all-star caliber player, also a long-time assistant coach with the Miami Heat. Alright, so finally, I've narrowed down my top candidates to 5. Starting off, it's Chauncey Billups. Now, Billups hasn't even completed his first season as an assistant in NBA yet. However, his name still commands respect from younger players, as they know him as being the finals MVP of the hard-nosed Pistons team that broke apart the Shaq and Kobe Lakers dynasty. He was also an MVP caliber point guard up until 2010, when his addition to the Nuggets team proved to be the difference between a perennial first-round exit team that they were for 6 straight seasons to a Western Conference finalist. Billups is someone that our players will respect but also relate to. His career got off to a rocky start, getting traded in his rookie season after being the 3rd overall pick in the 97 draft, and then bouncing around and playing for 4 different teams, including a small cup of coffee with the Magic in 2000, until he finally found his stride with the Timberwolves in 2002. He knows firsthand the amount of patience some talented players need, especially point guards, to adjust to the pace of the NBA. Tune into any Clippers game and you always find Chauncey on the sidelines talking to Kawhi, talking to Paul George or one of the younger players and giving them pointers, and you'll see in turn the players listening to him attentively. A few interesting tidbits I heard while listening to the Bill Simmons podcast with Ryan Russillo was that how well Billups commanded the attention from every person in every meeting or just random hangouts at ESPN. Billups has his way of commanding respect without asking for it, and people listen to everything he says. I've read numerous articles on how well Billups has worked with the development of Terrence Mann, a young Clipper who came up huge in the Clippers series turnaround against the Mavs and is currently playing with confidence. As he just posterized Gobert a few moments ago in Game 6, you can attribute his confidence to Billups' teachings. Therefore, I think Billups would be a solid hire as his name brings credibility. He also has some prior connection with the franchise and has been backed by many media personnel and executives to obtain a head coaching position. Moving on, the next best candidate would be Becky Hammond. Becky is a 6-time WNBA All-Star and was selected as one of the league's 20 best players of all time. Hammond recently finished her 7th season as an assistant with the San Antonio Spurs, being promoted to the front of the bench in June of 2018. She served as the head coach of the Spurs' Las Vegas Summer League team in 2015, 2016, and 2019, and guided the 2015 squad to the Summer League championship. With the Spurs, she had the opportunity to learn and grow under Greg Popovich. Pop has praised her basketball mind numerous times and vouched for her credibility as an NBA-level coach. She has deserved a spot as a longtime assistant coach, as Pop personally went out to sign her onto his staff. She was gonna coach somewhere in the WNBA after her retirement, but Pop saw something in her knack of play calling and saw her as an asset to his bench. Now, Pop's cosign alone should prove her worth, since some of Pop's previous disciples have gone on to have success as head coaches like Monty Williams, Quinn Snyder, Taylor Jenkins, Mike Budenholzer, James Borrego, Steve Kerr, Brett Brown, and even Doc Rivers. Becky Hammond would have the same opportunity with the 2021-2022 version of the Magic. Now, I know you might be saying, well, Jacques Vaughn is a product of the same Popovich coaching tree. And yeah, Jacques was clueless as ever during his time in Orlando, as he had an awful .270 winning percentage here. However, he only had 2 years of coaching experience prior to taking over as a head coach between 2010 and 2012. And Spurs fans will tell you that those were the dark years of the Pop and Tim Duncan era, 2 years of embarrassing playoff exits. Vaughn was clearly not ready to be a head coach. On the contrary, Hammond has nearly a decade of experience in the G League and the NBA. Gender is irrelevant when it comes to having a great basketball mind and the ability to effectively teach, inspire, and lead basketball players. Hammond could very well be the next coach to come out of Pop's impressive coaching tree, and it's time to get some credible Spurs DNA in our organization. Sean Marks, Budenholzer, Brett Brown, Taylor Jenkins, and even Doc Rivers in 2000 all turned their franchises around, and Hammond could do that as well. Next up on my Magic coaching wish list is Dave Joerger. Now, Dave Joerger is only 47 years old, but he already has 14 years of coaching experience, ranging from being a player development coach in the G League to a head coach of a Western Conference contending team. We're in need of someone who can excel in player development, and Joerger's time in the NBDL and D League, now known as the G League, proved that, as a total of 18 of his players were called up to the NBA under him. He also won 3 championships with the Dakota Wizards and another championship with Sioux Falls in both the CBA and the G League. And that's not even counting his success in the NBA. Joerger was hired as the head coach of the Grizzlies in 2013, and I'm aware that the Grizzlies went to the Western Conference Finals the year before they hired him, but honestly, they beat the Clippers in the first round without Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, and they beat a Thunder team without Russell Westbrook just to get to the conference finals. Dave did a great job with the Grizzlies, as I followed them as much as I could between 2014 to 2017, because 1, the Magic were rebuilding and I needed a playoff team to support, and 2, I wanted Vince Carter to win a ring, as I've been a Vince Carter and T-Mac stan since I was like 8 years old, and I wanted Daytona's finest to finally win a ring. Anyways, Joerger helped expand Marc Gasol's game and Mike Conley's game also on the offensive end, which propelled that Grizzlies core to actually contend and be a Western Conference force. I firmly believe that they would have beaten the 2015 Warriors if Conley never split his face in the previous round, and if Tony Allen never got injured after they went up 2-1 against the Warriors in the semifinals. The next year, Joerger led the Grizzlies to the playoffs after pretty much their whole team was injured. Like really, their whole starting lineup in the end featured 37-year-old Vince Carter, no, a 39-year-old Vince Carter, Lance Stevenson, Matt Barnes, Birdman Anderson, and a young JaMychal Green with Zebo. With Zebo coming off the bench. That was just an underrated coaching job. He eventually got fired after some arguments with the front office, but he quickly got a job with the Kings, and he did well there too. He developed a fast-paced offense that fit the talents of the young roster, which featured De'Aaron Fox, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and even Marvin Bagley, who I think finished first-team All-Rookie team in 2019. Kings fans were irate when Joerger was fired, But it was not his fault, because it was Vlade Divac calling the shots. That young 2019 Kings roster finished 9th in the West, by far the best finish since 2006. That 2019 team finished 5th in pace to Luke Walton's 2020 team that finished 20th, stunting the growth of Fox, Bagley, and Harry Giles along the process. Joerger is perceived as hard-headed, but I feel like everyone in a young core is mature well beyond their years and hungry to learn. You can see in the way they interact with each other, their fans, and their coaches off the court. Cole, J.I., RJ, Markel, Chuma, they're all young, mature men and willing to take on tough love from their coach in order to grow and reach their potential. They're aware of what it takes. Joerger has proved to lead young teams to improbable finishes in the past, and I believe he can do the same with the Magic. Alright, the second best candidate is David Vanterpool. Now, David Vanterpool is a former player whose career spanned 12 years with stints in the NBA, CBA, and overseas. Vanterpool was an assistant coach for the Portland Trail Blazers from 2012 to 2019. Now, this is a name that has made such a positive impression around the league that it was a shock when he wasn't hired for the Timberwolves job since he was an assistant coach with them. Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum were outraged enough to go on Twitter to post their displeasure. They both have said that Vanterpool played a big role in helping them reach the level that they're at right now. Vanterpool has paid his dues coaching not only the NBA but also in Europe as well. In addition, he's known to be a defensive specialist. Now, you might be asking, really? Defensive specialist? How? Since the Blazers aren't known to be a good defensive team. However, during his time there, they were a good defensive team. In fact, they even ranked amongst the top 10 in defensive rating in 2015 and 2018, and ranked 16 in 2019 despite starting two poor defenders in CJ McCollum and Dame Lillard, and also playing Enes Kanter heavily in their rotation. Portland's defensive rating plummeted after Vanterpool's departure in 2019 from 110.5, which was 16th in the NBA, to 114.8, which was 28th in the NBA, and in this past season, they finished 29th in defensive rating. I think Vanterpool will be a good hire since he's paid his dues coaching and is respected all across the league. His defensive philosophy will resonate to our young core. It's essential that a young group of players understand the importance of defense early on, as it helps grow healthy winning habits that will come into use hopefully when we become contenders in the future. And finally, the best person suited for the Orlando Magic head coaching position is Kenny Atkinson, who is currently an assistant coach with the LA Clippers. Now, Kenny is number one on my list as he fits the two main criteria for what the Magic need at the helm. One, being someone who is young enough to progress head-on on a full-fledged rebuild, and two, has had recent experience in turning a team's culture around as the main head coach. Kenny Atkinson has already proven that as a head coach at the Brooklyn Nets after a 3-year stretch where he gradually improved his team's winning percentage from an awful .212 to a respectable .512 and a playoff berth with a team filled with young cast-offs and veteran misfits. Sound familiar? You know that Nets culture that everyone talks about that attracted Kyrie and KD? Well, yeah, Sean Marks was the mastermind behind it, but it was Kenny who orchestrated and harnessed the growth of that culture into fruition. Jarrett Allen, D'Angelo Russell, Karis LeVert, Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie all significantly improved during Atkinson's time there. I want to point out D'Angelo Russell specifically. He disciplined D'Lo and held him accountable for his defensive effort and lapses of lack of concentration off the ball by benching him whenever he made those mistakes. He wasn't scared of benching the young prize lotto pick that they just acquired. It forced Russell to change his approach and made him into a player who could be a net positive on the court. We saw firsthand how much D'Lo improved as he dropped 40 on the Magic in the 2019 season. I think it was late January of that season, and from that game on, D'Lo and the Nets went on a strong push towards the playoffs. He put D'Lo in great spots to succeed. For instance, allowing him to work around the mid-range and gave him the confidence to make mistakes, but also forced him to learn from it, or there would be consequences. I want him to do the same for Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz, as I feel like those two are in the same boat as D'Lo was back in 2017. Nobody thought that D'Lo would ever earn a max contract back then. He was considered a talented chucker with terrible defense and not a true point guard, something we're hearing a lot now about Cole Anthony. I'm confident that Kenny Atkinson is someone that can build a strong culture that this franchise and its fans deserve. We already have a bunch of improved players with untapped potential, similar to those Nets players I mentioned earlier. I believe lightning can strike twice and Kenny can get the ship rolling and turn our fortunes around. Well, that's the end of the video. What do you guys think? Is Kenny Atkinson the best person for the Magic job? If not, then who? Please let me know in the comment section below. Fans of the 7 other teams with head coaching vacancies, you can chime in too. Please let me know if Kenny is high on your team's list. If not, then who?